Oh, our heads are too small. I can do better. There we go. No, then they're too big.
Yay!
No, but
No small heads.
this is what we want. This is the one we want.
Excellent.
We're back.
We are back. It's
We're
been
back.
so long.
It was a long time, but so much has happened.
Too much has happened. Well, Trump became president while we've been missing.
All but. I mean, he's closer to being president than anyone else in the world is.
That's true. That is true. I should say he won the election while we were gone.
But I mean, he's certainly having more of an effect on policy than the other guy. What was his name again?
Kamala Harris. No,
President
Joe Biden.
Biden.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Or his many, many aides who we found out are credibly the ones who are running the White House in his stead, which it was shocking to me that anyone really cared. By the time it came out in the, Washington Post, everybody already knew. This wasn't, I mean, James O'Keefe had already done an exclusive on it where he met with his chief of staff and they got him on recording saying, yeah, the guy's not there.
But what, like you say, what could anyone else have thought?
There are people out there who genuinely believe that this man is running the country and the conservative right is just a bunch of conspiracy theorists, nonsense speakers who are there to discredit the president no matter what he does. Oh, that was just a kerfuffle. Oh, he's just a silly old man. Oh, he wasn't lost. He just wanted to go check out the cafe next to where they were hosting the G7 spot. And that was year one of his election. And, people are like, well, what is the difference between this and our prior presidents, where this happened? I said, well, because the prior presidents are what led to us putting in the 21st so that it wouldn't happen again. And here we are again. So
here we are again.
Or 25th, excuse me.
Numbers, whatever.
The numbers, something's. How was Alaska? How are your holidays?
Well, boy, yeah. So, I mean, the Jewish holidays were what they, usually are, incredibly meaningful, and we had lots of family in and out, and thank God, everyone's healthy and strong and reproducing, and
oh, nice.
Speaking of which, your announcement has never actually been shared with this particular audience, I don't think.
Oh. I am with child. God has blessed me.
She's with child.
I am with child. I have a little bit. I even have a little bump, Ron. I've never had a stomach in my whole life.
Well, let me tell you a thing or two.
I keep looking in the mirror, and it was so funny because during your first trimester, you're not actually supposed to show. But I was on a lot of medications that increased my bloating in general. So I already looked like I'm like 3 months pregnant. And it was hilarious because I kept telling my husband, I'm not even showing. I'm just fat. I'm just fat. But now I'm just happy. I mean, it's like every day I look down at my little belly and I'm thrilled. I'm like, that's great. This is going to get big. And then I'm going to have a baby. And I just can't wait to meet him.
So, we Jewish people are very superstitious about pregnancy.
Oh, tell me.
Like we don't talk about names. We don't buy things. We don't say things about relating to the future or the baby is gonna. And we say we have like little verbal formulations like canine horror, which means there shouldn't be an evil eye. Like, and from Mormon lifestyle that in families where there are lots of pregnancies, there are lots of people have lots of different experiences of what can happen during a pregnancy.
Yeah, a lot.
But this is fantastic news, Danny, and it's also, it's really. I mean, this could even be a topic that we could talk about in the course of our discussions tonight, which is the relationship between people's outlook on life and fertility, demographically and sociologically and individually. But first, just catching up on stuff. You asked me about Alaska. those of your people who are here tonight may not have kept up with my adventures. I was in Alaska first couple of weeks of December for about 10 days, including the travel. And I'll say that, let me say this first. Alaska and New Jersey, very, very far away from each other.
How long is the flight?
Really long distance. So you have to really fly in an airplane, and there's no direct flight from New Jersey, from Newark, even though it's an international airport. But it is it was well worth it. I went there at the behest of the Alaska Republican Party, which did not hire Ron Coleman. They hired Harmeet Dillon, the head of our law firm, and who has also, since we last spoke, been nominated by President-elect Donald J. Trump to be the Assistant Attorney General, or the Deputy Attorney General for Civil Rights. That's really a good job for her.
It's ideal.
That's really a good thing for America. Imagine a Justice Department that actually enforces civil rights.
Why don't you tell people a little bit about Harmeet's work during 2020 and the California restrictions on businesses, speech, abilities to gather, and some of the work that she did? Because I had already known about Harmeet when she ran for the head of the GOP, the National RNC. And so I was, she doesn't know me. I'm a big fan though. But I was sitting here campaigning for her here in Utah, trying to get all of our delegates to vote for her. And I was, and meanwhile, they're trying to get me to be a delegate. And I was like, I'm busy, I'm working. But anyway, I was bragging about Harmeet. And then come 2020 rolls around and I just see her go to work and I go, this woman is a force to be reckoned with. She's incredible.
Unfortunately, in 2020, she was not given the opportunity to run the election integrity operation. And I don't think that in and of itself would have made the difference, but I certainly didn't help matters. Harmeet is a hell of an election lawyer. I started working with her in 2020 before the election. It was actually in the spring when we were still, as you point out, dealing with COVID restrictions. And I was in another law firm. And she asked me if I would act as local counsel for a case they were bringing in New Jersey, challenging COVID restrictions that were being imposed on religious worship in New Jersey, and which we believed were an unconstitutional abridgment of the First Amendment right to attend public prayer. And these restrictions were more severe than they needed to be, and we had a prima facie case, and we got an order to show cause, which is in New Jersey kind of a much more unusual thing than in New York, for example, across the river, where they give them out like candy. But when we reached the preliminary injunction stage, the state started doing that two-step where it pulls back ever so slightly from the, from the regulations. And well, the Supreme Court had not yet reached the configuration that it has now, and we weren't able to get what we needed from the court. But we started to work together then, and then in the 2020 election, she sent me to Philadelphia to try to help break open the log jam there on election integrity. And again, we were, we don't have to rehearse that. But Harmeet she's a badass.
She's amazing.
She's really, really knowledgeable. She's a great manager of legal teams. Like she knows how to marshal assets, whether it's personnel or other kinds of assets. She's got an amazing network all over the country. She requires an extremely high standard of work and no excuses kind of environment, like me, except better. She comes out of a big firm environment, so her standards are extremely high. And she also she's really principled, and she has been a close confidant of Donald Trump for a long time. And I was not surprised that she accepted the opportunity to go to Washington this time. She had a tough year.
Yeah.
She lost her father. She lost her husband. So it made sense that she might be looking for a change of scene. And plus, why wouldn't a person want to leave San Francisco these days?
Well, if she needs an assistant or just a hyped gal who just wants to come out to DC and assist her, I'm there. So let her know that she has a huge fan who also was supported by the Sikh community here in part because of her. My opponent was Sikh, and
interesting.
But he screwed over his own community when they were building one of the temples here, or his father did, and he got wrapped up in that. And so fortunately, they were open to supporting me as a candidate, and they were incredible. I went to the Sikh temple maybe 3 or 4 times during the campaign and met with everybody, and it's an incredibly tight-knit community. And this was at the time do you remember that shooting occurred? And it took out, I want to say 6 or 7 people in California, and they were Sikh, and it appeared to be targeted. And so that was during that time. And to see the mourning of the community here was very touching and meaningful. And I was really glad to get to know everyone here.
Yeah, there's a lot of admiration for her. There's no question about that. And, she was one of the people who gave a convocation at the opening of the Republican National Committee, in fact.
And it was a beautiful, beautiful prayer. Really well done.
So it's really good. She's, she really has she knows civil rights law, discrimination law. She's really personally aggrieved by anti-Semitism in a way that a lot of people would find hard to understand if they didn't know her and know her background. She actually attended Jewish schools when she first moved to the U.S. with her family.
That's why she's such an incredible lawyer. That makes a lot more sense. I'm sure she's naturally gifted, but let's be honest. If I went to Jewish schools, I'd probably be a better attorney too. So,
yes, thanks God. Kay asks a question that I think is, I'm going to have to look on. Hold on a second here. Got to get my way to comments. Even though the comments are still all free comments, that's okay. We're going to ask some good questions. You think I need a new camera? John, no, it's not the camera. I swear there's something wrong with the circuit that this camera is on, and it blinks. And I changed it from 60 to 50 megahertz, and it's still blinking. It's not the camera. I think it has to do with the circuit this computer is on. But Kay asked a question that I wanted to answer. Well, the answer is yes. Harmy does have to be approved by the Senate, so she's not leaving us quite so fast.
I don't see any reason to obstruct her or to try and.
No, I don't think anyone can touch her on that. Tell you.
Yeah, I don't think she has any particular enemies, to be completely frank. She's really well.
Well, no one who matters. No one who matters.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, it has been a very eventful second half of 2024. And what else can I tell you? Then there's all this stuff, all these kinds of legal things that have happened and court things that have happened, and I think we ought to talk about them because it's a law stream after all.
It is indeed a lost dream. Otherwise, I was going to say, yeah, I can relate to it being an eventful second half. Poor Harvey, she lost her husband and her father. I lost my father and one of my best friends, Jeff, Legal Vices, and it was within such
Right.
a short time. We're talking like 6 weeks, and then yeah, that happened, and then I found out I was pregnant in between those two times. So it was like, when I say that this baby was a blessing, I mean that. It really lifted me. And in South Korea, they count your time in the womb as your lifetime, by the way. So when you are born in South Korea, you're already a year old. So they're just now, speaking of law, they just eliminated that last year. It's going to take a while to take full effect because there's so many South Koreans who are used to using 1 year older than they technically are. And then we've already nicknamed our baby, which is what you do before the baby's born. You don't give them an official name, but they get a nickname. And so ours is Bokdongi, which means good luck, luck charm. So it's a little good luck charm.
Did you end up staying in Korea a little bit longer than you had planned to?
Well, yeah, because we found out I was pregnant. And so we ran to the clinic and she was like, technically you can travel and it won't have an effect on the baby. However, given your age and given certain, physical constraints that you have, I would recommend that you just stay one more week. Yeah, abortion is legal in Korea, Mary Jane. It is elective, and so for that reason, they actually don't allow you by law to know the gender of your baby for the first 4 months, 4 to 6 months. So they delay telling you the gender because most people prefer one gender over the other. And so to ensure that there aren't people making elective abortion decisions on the basis of sex, they delay telling the sex of the baby. So we genuinely don't know. We don't know anything, even though we probably could have found out when we were out there. So it's really fascinating. Actually, a lot of human cloning, that risk of human cloning. Do you remember there was one mad scientist who had started the process of cloning human
In
beings?
Italy, right?
Huh?
In Italy.
No, South Korea.
Oh, was South
So the
Korea, was it?
technology and all of that started in South Korea. And so Korea really clamped down on their genetics laws and also on their IVF laws. They're very, very specific: who can transfer, when transfers can happen, what genetic testing can be done. The process for donating eggs is very, very different than here. So here you can donate your eggs. A woman can donate ovum. And you're actually paid for your ovum, which frankly you should be, by the way. All the ladies out there, if you don't know what goes into egg extraction, it is rough. It is not an easy procedure. And so if you can get paid, definitely do get paid. But it's fascinating. I mean, the laws in terms, don't ask me why I'm become a specialist in IVF and why this is so interesting to me. I just find it beyond fascinating, Ron. Like the idea that you can take two people's genetic offspring. Okay, so you take an egg and a sperm, they meet, you get an embryo, and then the fact that you can take that embryo and implant it into the uterus of another woman and sign a contract to say that that embryo in the other woman's womb is still your property, and you can determine whether or not that property is destroyed or kept, or who receives the baby afterwards, and the conditions at which an embryo develops into a fetus, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's insane. And I don't think that the law is well equipped at all to catch up to the technologies that we use in reproductive health. It's very concerning to me.
No,
So
sure
I'm
it's
not a
not.
big fan of surrogacy personally, because we haven't addressed those legal ambiguities yet in the law. And I think it leads to a lot of heartache, a lot of parents who get divorces and they have leftover embryos. And the discussion then ensues: who gets to keep the embryos, right? Must the embryos be destroyed? Typically, when you go into a reproductive center, they'll offer you certain policies. They'll say, you need to sign these forms and agree that the embryos will be destroyed or that they'll be kept. And then there's an entire discussion about morality and where life begins. Are you keeping property by storing embryos that are frozen that have only just begun multiplication. They're not even, 2 or 3 cells yet, but they are fertilized. Is it moral? Is it immoral? Is it just? Is it unjust? These are all questions that we need to talk about before we jump into, yes, we need to fund IVF nationwide, because if funding IVF also means funding surrogacy, there's going to be a lot of problems. Funding IVF meaning, an egg and a sperm being transferred into the mother's womb, that's not nearly as concerning, right? Because we already have laws that are designed to address those issues.
Well, but
Funding
also
IVF,
they are simpler issues.
they're simpler issues. It's two parents who have it going into the mother, into the one parent. That's way easier than we're now going to involve a third party and use her body to host the child, give birth to the child, but we have power and rights over that, not child, but property. These are hard questions and hard issues to tackle. And if we don't tackle them now, we're going to have a situation like they did in Alabama, where the Alabama Supreme Court willy-nilly out of nowhere says, actually, Black Law's Dictionary, when they say a woman is with child, it actually means that the child is alive. Ergo, an embryo that's frozen, that is simply fertilized and has not implanted into a woman's uterus, is not in fact property, but is in fact law or life. And so if a reproductive center destroys said property, either intentionally or unintentionally, it's akin to homicide. Wait a second. That doesn't make sense, Ron, because if you think about it, women pass fertilized ovum all the time. They pass embryos that go through the uterus all the time for one reason or another. Maybe it's the wrong time of the month. Maybe the endometrium isn't strong enough to hold a pregnancy. Maybe they have what's considered a chemical miscarriage. We don't know all the reasons, but what we do know is this happens all the time. So is every time that a woman has a cycle now an abortion? Are they now killing their child? Or rather, is an embryo simply the potential for life until it implants, at which point we can say it's no longer property? I don't know. Okay.
Well,
I know what I believe.
In Japan, they've got a pretty good. They've got it figured out, because look at Aaron's chat.
Oh, they do that in Korea. If I lived in Korea right now, they'd be paying me to stay home, and they pay for baby post-birth. So they send you a stipend every month for a year. They pay for baby's crib. They pay for classes. They pay for birth. They pay for midwifery. They have a nurse. You stay, by the way, in the hospital a month prior to the birth and like several weeks after to recover. They have dietitians. They have everyone there. So it's a whole nother story in South Korea. They take it seriously because they understand the population. We need babies. We need babies in the world. I am a huge advocate for babies. I'm a huge advocate for IVF as a result. Not so much, surrogacy. Like I said, we have problems there. But in terms of population, we need more, not less babies. And that's why I liked Elon Musk initially. And I still, to some extent, like the guy, because he's an advocate for more babies in the world. And
he's not only an advocate, he puts his money where his mouth is.
He does. I thought the guy should start, in my opinion, he should start up a scholarship for couples. No, I'm serious. Start up a scholarship for couples to apply for in order to receive the funds to pay for IVF, because here it costs about $15,000 minimum. That's your starting rate. That does not include your hormones. And the hormones that you're purchasing, because the FDA is now exercising greater control over those hormones, and because those hormones are being synthesized, and the companies are coming in and claiming rights over the synthesized versions and patenting those rights over the synthesized versions, the FDA is now restricting your access to them. So, for example, FSH used to be classified as, I think it was like it was some classification that was a lower classification, meaning that they could create FSH compounds at a compounding pharmacy. So a monthly supply of FSH would be around $100. Well, then a company came in and they synthesized the form, a much less effective form of the hormone, And the FDA subsequently, at the same time, decided to reclassify the hormone as a higher class hormone, so that now compounding pharmacies cannot work with it, and only special research companies can work with it. And you have to pay for $800 per month for a less effective form of the same hormone. So it's a money-making industry in the States. We don't treat it as what it is, which is, it is healthcare, and it is something that we need.
Eileen or Ellen asks this question. This is one of your peeps, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Can you answer her question?
So,
Well,
let me read it out for people who are just listening. Why can't the U.S. have more regulated IVF like the rest of the developed world? Both sperm and eggs can be frozen separately. Many countries don't allow embryo batching. We're one of the only ones that does. So embryo batching is allowed also in South Korea. Actually, in most developed nations, embryo batching is allowed. We do allow for freezing sperm and eggs separately. Here's the problem. There has been significant evidence suggesting that embryos tend to survive the freezing and thawing process more readily and better than eggs and sperm. The other problem that you have is, let's say you don't fertilize eggs and sperm. You don't know which embryos are going to be viable at the time that they are fertilized. You only know until they're fertilized. So let's say that your male partner, let's say that it is male, what is it called?
Gamete?
Yes. But there's a specific clinical term where male factor. So it's male factor infertility. Okay. So if it's male factor infertility, one of the best ways to find out is you take an egg, an ovum, you use IVF to fertilize said egg. And if the egg generates, if it starts to replicate, okay, we know that that's a fertilized egg. That embryo is a viable embryo. We can go ahead and transfer. By the way, you guys, not every embryo you transfer becomes a baby. Most embryos and most transfers do not work the first time. And you need either multiple embryos or multiple transfers in order for the uterus to accept the embryo. So this is not a perfect science. It is very much a practice. It is very much still experimental in many ways. And it's interesting because in the US, the boards that control how many embryos are transferred and when are far more restrictive than in other countries. So in other countries, let's say South Korea, they may transfer 3 or 4 embryos at one time, but in the United States, they will only transfer 1 embryo at a time. And it's very interesting. And the reason why they say that is they don't want multiples. They don't want twins. Makes sense. There's health risks that come with twins. Twins are costly. And some women's bodies are not designed to hold twins. So if they get pregnant with multiples, there's a risk to the babies and to the mom. However, I suspect it's a money-making machine, because if you're charging $6,000 per transfer, per embryo, you can make quite a bit more money transferring one embryo, having that transfer fail, and having them come in and transfer again and again and again. And then if your clinic creates its own supplements to go along with that transfer and prenatal supplements, well, now you're making even more money. Now let's say that they have a deal with whoever the drug company is that they have contracted with in order to obtain the hormones that you need in order to have a successful transfer. Well, now they're making even more money. So I'm not saying that it's for financial reasons. I'm just saying there is a financial incentive to transfer only one embryo at a time. And what's sad is when they do the group freezing and group thawing, you are losing multiple embryos if you're only choosing to transfer one, because you can only dethaw them once, is my understanding at least. So there's quite a bit of financial incentives in the industry that need to be worked out.
As well as some very sticky legal and moral issues.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's simple, right? For me, it's very, very simple. As of right now, the legal definition of life, in my opinion, and the scientific definition of life, human life, Human life is created when you have a fertilized egg that implants into a human female uterus. That simple. Outside of that, there is no point of viability. That baby will not develop. It's kind of like baking a cake. You can sit there and make a batter, but a batter does not a cake make. You need an oven. Yes? So without the oven, you don't have a cake. You have batter. And I think that that's fair to say. Now, there's a lot of scientists and a lot of theologians and brilliant people out there who disagree with me, and that's fine. They say, look, as soon as the moment of conception occurs, when the egg is fertilized, there is a zinc explosion. You can actually see this. Have you seen this?
No.
So they have been able to image and microscopically image the moment where this little release of zinc occurs, and a light, like a little aura, appears around the egg. It's very sweet. And many scientists believe that that's where life begins, where that seed germinates. And it's very interesting. So I understand the arguments for fertilization equaling human life, right? It has its own DNA at that point. The minute it starts to replicate, it has its own DNA. You can say that makes it a human being. But for me, until it implants into a human uterus, we can't say it's a human life. So
how do you like that? That's not something you get on every lawyer stream, this stuff.
That's it. What about you, Ron? What do you think?
I think that babies are great. For these issues, I defer to my local Orthodox rabbi, and they haven't come up in my life in a very long time. I have children, I have grandchildren, and thank God everyone is healthy and evidently fertile. So
yay!
Hopefully
that's exciting.
That will
that
continue. We had a Hanukkah party at my house Saturday night after Shabbos, and all of my children and grandchildren, as well as my brother's children and grandchildren, were here in my house, and it was marvelous. It was really very nice, obviously, and it happened that we're right now in the cycle of reading the Torah portion, where we follow the adventures of Joseph in the court of Pharaoh and the interactions with the other brothers, and about how the children of Jacob all end up coming on down to Egypt.
Very generous guy, Joseph. That one. Very, very forgiving. very, very forgiving man.
People often forget. I mean, incredible. Really one of the most dramatic literary moments you could possibly experience is when Joseph reveals himself to his brothers, building up the drama, with these different gestures that he's making that don't seem to make a lot of sense. But when all is revealed and Pharaoh says, I want you to bring your whole family down. Okay, we're going to share the grain and it's going to be great. I want to meet your father. And it's 70 people come in, 70 members of Jacob's family. If you count Jacob, it says 70. We only have 69 names that it's obvious who they are. So it may be 70 includes Jacob. Maybe it includes Moses' mother, who was born at the gate. But the point is, from 70, they become this great nation. So it was a nice thing to sort of mention, how my brother and I there were just the two of us 30 years ago. And now we had this household full of, thank God, adults and children. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. But let me not leave that statement just hanging out there. That's what it's all about. You often hear people say, It's really all about family. That's really an oversimplification. It's not merely just about family, because if it were just about family, then you'd really be no different from a raccoon
Yep.
or a muskrat or fish. It's not just about family. It's about raising a family that carries on and transmits the values that you treasure, and that hopefully connect you to the creator. It's not just about family. It's not just everyone should be happy and everyone should, and love conquers all. It's part of a big picture. It has to have meaning. And I know I can say this to Danny because these are issues that are very meaningful to her as well. Family is part of God's plan. Everyone in the world is created to be fruitful and multiply. And now we have these incredible technologies that we were just talking about that enable people who may have had great difficulty or may not have even been able to fulfill this command that God gave to Noah, who is the ancestor of all humanity.
Love Noah. Just told my husband the story of Noah yesterday, actually, because he was feeling a little insecure. Someone had criticized his business plan or his model, and I turned to him and I said, "Hey, I know a guy who got made fun of quite a bit and who had the foresight and had the passion and felt that little spark of creativity and was led by God, told what to do, and he just did it anyway." And guess who was laughing at the end of the day? I'm sure he wasn't laughing. The guy was the nice guy. I'm sure he was mourning.
No, he wasn't. And in fact, he did try to convince.
He did try
to repent and yeah, he was mocked. Yep. I want to take this opportunity to share our first super chat of the night.
Hey, thank you, Cinder Blocks for Tires.
For Cinder Blocks for Tires, I'm. Who you can read it, I think, and this is again one of your peeps.
It is indeed. Cinder Blocks for Tires, $10 super chat says, "Merry Christmas, Danny, to you, Mr. On, and good luck charm. Thank you so very much, Bokdongi. I believe your ride or die is watching over you all. I sure as heck think so too. Happy Hanukkah to Ron and all his Colemans."
Thank you so much. I've actually had a car that I recovered on cinder blocks when I lived in Brooklyn in the late 80s.
Hey,
Good
Ron,
time. Good
can
time.
I invite myself to your next Hanukkah party that is a public open party?
Well, we don't have those kind of things.
Oh.
But I will invite you to our next private Hanukkah party.
Yeah. I would love to come.
I think you would love to meet the Colemen and, of course, women. I know Jane would get a big kick out of meeting you.
Yay!
She admires you, I know.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And we're all obviously so happy about your good news. And maybe even our next wedding. We've got one more to marry off. So maybe that's hopefully will come before our next Hanukkah party, since I alternate with my brother.
Do you get potato cakes at those as well? Because let's be honest, I'm coming for
You're coming for the
I'm coming for the food. That's all. I really, really love those. My grandmother, she was the
one thing I can promise you is that if you come for a wedding, instead of a Hanukkah party, you won't have what to complain regarding the food.
Excellent. I'll be there.
Jane and I got married during Hanukkah. In fact,
Aww.
The fifth night of Hanukkah was our wedding.
Congratulations on your anniversary then.
It was our anniversary last night, and 35 years.
Wrong.
35 years. Oh. And I'll tell you what Jane always says whenever I hear about someone, whenever we hear about someone getting divorced, we say, if we could stay married.
No one has an excuse.
No one has an excuse. Two lawyers with excessively fancy degrees. You're asking a lot. It's a lot.
Incredibly brilliant too.
And one of them has ADHD. Okay. That's already. But then again, when we got married, there was no such thing as ADHD. It was just being, immature and irresponsible. Okay, so that's the sort of kind of the holiday theme. You had wanted to talk about one topic you did mention was the TikTok case.
Can you please explain to people why banning TikTok is not a violation of the First Amendment and why it is not anti-free speech principle to say that we should not allow this company to operate this weaponized app in our country
Well, that's a funny.
under the ownership of our not real enemy / frenemy.
It's funny that
That'd be
you're
fun.
asking me to explain it when I think I was the skeptic. Remember when we were both on laid back law
Yes.
and you were very strong on this, and I think I had a little bit more of a problem with it. So why don't you explain why it's so clear to you that there's no constitutional problem with this? And then I'll see what I can do to nibble away at it.
My issue, and I think that the arguments that have been posed are very fair, which is we are not trying to ban the speech that is being propagated on TikTok. Rather, we are banning an algorithm and an entire app that is designed to spy on Americans, devalue American values, including trying to demoralize our population, spying on our population everywhere they go, everything they type, everything they do, and algorithmically damaging the United States morale. Now, that is very different than trying to censor speech. We're not saying that you can't believe that the United States is evil or racist or that you can't say these things. You can say those things on any other platform, but a platform and an algorithm and an app that is designed as a weapon against the United States people, that is designed to demoralize the people, and that is owned and operated by a foreign entity, which we can only hold accountable either one of two ways: banning and kicking out, or going to war over. There is no practical way to hold them legally accountable when they violate the law, because it's not a question of if, it's when they will violate US law. What are the consequences here? What can we actually do to hold them accountable? The answer is nothing. So there's a big difference between local ownership or ownership by a citizen or having some nexus and having the headquarters of a company here in the United States being able to hold the people who make the decisions for the company, for that algorithm, for that app, for that weapon here in the United States accountable versus foreign entities that are utilizing this algorithm app to spy on our own national citizens here in the United States. So for me, these are two distinct differences. I have issues with banning RT News from coming into the United States. That's different. RT News, you don't have to download an app in order to listen to its messages. You should absolutely have access to RT News, to propaganda overseas. I have no problem with propaganda coming into the United States. My problem is when you are utilizing an app to spy on our citizens, to demoralize our citizens, where you have targeted the algorithm specifically to do those things, to become highly addictive, and there is no measure of transparency or accountability against the company.
I think that those are very compelling points. Here, I think is the counterpoint. What we're outlawing here is a mode of communication. And it's not merely a technology. It is a platform for the exchange of images, ideas, and again, content. It is, as far as I know, unprecedented in terms of, I mean, I'm sure we do know that there are technology limitations that are applied to all kinds of things. But the idea of a technology that is used by the public to communicate with other members of the public, even though there's an admixture in there of manipulation and foreign interests that are trying to subvert us, that's been true of every form of the press, certainly in the 20th century. I mean, communists have run all kinds of newspapers for the longest time. Why should we be allowed to read the Daily Worker? I think I'll say this much. A lot of First Amendment lawyers that I know are comfortable with your position on this. I just have a real question about how you okay. It's not and. Also I have a question of how you enforce the illegality of the software. I guess what you can say is the company can't operate in the US and it's illegal to make the software available. But doesn't that sound kind of creepy? This is illegal software. Well, there are such things as illegal software, obviously. I mean, hell, if Hollywood decides that something is a copyright risk, they can get Congress to outlaw almost anything. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of really good, juicy issues here. And I don't think the Supreme Court really should be making this decision. These are policy decisions. These are absolutely policy decisions. And it looks like Congress has, to a large extent, made them. But I think it's going to be a very lively argument. So I just want to point out that we have a super chat here from the Jackals of Terra Argentum.
I'm glad that you've read. I'm glad you read that slowly because I always mispronounce his name. I shouldn't, but I do.
Agreeing with you that the notion that foreign entities should be entitled to American constitutional rights has always been absurd to me. The alien has no business being shielded by our laws. That's a different topic. Because the problem with that, I mean, as a general principle, I may as well, while I'm doing these, okay, we might have not given Eileen her full.
I love you too, Eileen.
Okay, and I also want to thank John for the anniversary wishes. And now I want to hide it. That's what I want to do. Hide. Okay. What was I saying?
You were saying that the question as to whether or not the Constitution extends its rights and protections to foreign entities is a different discussion. I don't think it is, because I believe that is actually one of the arguments that is raised in the briefs that went up to the Supreme Court, which is foreign entities do have certain rights. Foreign individuals do have certain rights under the Constitution. Those rights, though, are very, very limited. And it's basically limited to due process rights, not to all the other rights that would protect a U.S. citizen.
Right, but it doesn't really answer our question, because it would be very easy to establish a domestic entity that would act in every manner exactly the same way. And at what point do we say, this kind of goes back to your RT point. At what point do we say you're not really an American company because you're really being controlled? You might make rules, but then you're drawing bright lines that might be rather arbitrary. I'm not just saying it's not a legitimate point, but I don't think it's going to be the basis on which an important precedent is going to be established.
So, Ron, let's play this out here really quickly. Let's say that Congress passes a law that says, regardless of the speech that you agree with, if you receive campaign donations or campaign funds in order to run a certain campaign ad, you must treat all political candidates equally. You cannot shadow ban them, okay? And if you run ads for free, they must be neutral and unbiased. And if they do favor one talent or one candidate over another, you must provide equal airtime. We know Congress has done this, and they're able to enforce it in terms of television and newspapers, specifically newspapers and news media. The question is, how do you do that against a foreign entity, specifically someone who is a frenemy? So that's my question, and that's the issue right there.
Well, I'll tell you something that I think would be also valuable. We often see people on social media talking about treason. And
that escalated quickly.
Well, here's my point. I'm always reminding people that treason only applies in times of war. It's defined in the Constitution as giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
And to the loser.
I'm sorry?
And to the loser of the war. The winner of the war is never treasonous.
All right. Well, guess what?
But anyway, continue. Sorry.
Danny has used the term frenemy several times here, and it's well chosen. What do you do about countries that you are either in a proxy war with? I mean, during the Korean War, American and Chinese troops, pilots, were engaged in dogfights with each other. What do you do? But there's no state of declared war between the United States and China. Does that mean that there could be no treason if someone were to, give aid and comfort to what we used to call Red China? It might be a useful thing for us to take another look at the question of how we evaluate relationships with countries. Does it have to, is there just all countries in the world, or countries who are all in the same pot, versus countries we're at war with?
I'm so glad you asked that question, which goes directly to ITAR. And this is where I think it was me and Uncivil Law who agreed that this should squarely fall under an ITAR regulation. If it is deemed to be a particular weapon, well, then the answer is very simple. And the answer is this. ITAR regulations, it's the, International Trade Arms Regulations? Yes. So basically what in the ITAR, it specifies that certain foreign enemies or certain states are not allowed to participate in the creation of weapons. They're not allowed to have software related to weapons. They're not even allowed to have old, redone hardware related to weapons. We're not allowed to do or sell or play at all with certain entities. And it is determined by a small select group within the State Department. They are answerable. They answer to Congress and to the president. Okay. That group of countries that we are not allowed to sell to, play with, engage with, changes periodically as our relationships change with these countries, as you can imagine. And oftentimes, a lot of companies will get around ITAR regulations by selling or trading with our friendly neighbors, who then trade and then resell to our not so friendly frenemies. So while we don't have direct control over where the proceeds, funds, where our software, where our hardware goes to in terms of international arms trade specifically, we at least have some control over where those things go. And wouldn't you rather have some control over the arms trade than no control, specifically when it comes to software and algorithms and apps? And so
And this is a great segue for Wellesley's comment, which is that this is as you used the term before, this is a weapon. Ron, how can you the comparison is not to a newspaper or even to the BBC or RT.
Or to RT.
It's a weapon. They're shooting video beams at us.
I don't know about that, but they certainly are collecting your heart rate, your eyes, where they go on the screen. They are controlling and manipulating whole groups of individuals, just like Facebook did. But the difference is we can control Facebook. Congress can call in Facebook and hold the leaders of Facebook to account. They can be fined. They can be sanctioned. They can get in trouble. Their business operations can be shut down. What do you do when TikTok, or what is it, Dance Bite, decides to do the same thing? Bite Dance. You can't do anything. And that right there is the problem. It's foreign control versus national control and enforcement.
And there's a perfect segue to Jefferson Super Chat. If the needle is to be threaded on foreign control, then how much do we have to worry about a creeping definition of control? Do tax breaks count? Yeah, that's a lawyer's dream / nightmare, depending on whether you're getting paid or whether your client is in trouble over it.
Ask FinCEN. By the way, everybody, you now need to comply because the Court of Appeals decided to overturn the injunction on the requirement that you disclose to FinCEN, to the U.S. government, all beneficial owners. Who the hell is a beneficial owner? Is it somebody who benefits, who donated to you? Like, is it your Uncle Tom? Is it who is a beneficial owner? Who do I need to spy on and give updates to the U.S. government, their address, their names, and everything else connected to my small business? These are questions that need to be addressed right now, but it's in the form of financial regulations. So here we are worried about freaking TikTok, which I understand. It's 150 million users here in the United States. So 1/3 of the population utilizes TikTok. Not 1/3 of the population owns a business. Right. So I can kind of understand why people aren't freaking out about this new rule that was just implemented. But my question is why are we not freaking out about it? If we are deciding, okay, we can't control TikTok, we shouldn't ban TikTok, then I'm in the position to say we shouldn't be controlling who transfers money to who and where. I don't care if you're transferring it to your brother Ahmed who lives in Syria. I don't care.
So,
if
Danny, do you realize what this is?
What
we are talking about here
is money not free speech? Because I thought that the Supreme Court said it was. So
right.
You're sitting here saying that you're going to control what I have access to, who I communicate with, but you can't have control of what I have access to on my phone in this app. You can't control that because that's a violation of free speech, but you can control who I send money to. That's absurd. That is the ultimate absurdity. Do you agree or disagree, Ron?
I agree, and what we're really talking about here is the singularity.
I got all upset. I'm sorry.
What?
I got all upset. I apologize.
You did?
Yeah, that was my little pregnancy flare.
Are you pink?
A little bit upset.
Yeah,
I'm upset. Look, I'm getting a justice rash.
That's what I think. That's what I thought I know. This is the singularity. Now add crypto.
Yes.
Ideas, images, videos, transactions are all represented by data. These are data weapons. Money are data weapons. Money only exists. Oh, that is a lot of justice now. This girl is.
I am really pissed. I'm sorry. It's so upsetting when these constitutional principles only apply to corporate interests and never to the individual, when it so obviously applies to the individual, when our founding fathers drafted the Constitution with the individual citizen in mind, not just corporations. If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. If you're going to sit here and say we can't ban TikTok, well, then guess what? You should not, as a government, be able to access where you shouldn't even be looking at my bank account, first of all, let alone be able to flag my transactions and prevent me from sending money to whoever I want for whatever reason. I should not have to ask permission from a bank to have access to my own funds. It is insane and it is absurd. That is not how the relationship with the government works. They should be asking for our permission to use our funds, which they so often do not. And they've created a million loopholes to avoid ever having to be held accountable by the taxpayer. But they want you to be accountable for every single dime you spend or receive on Cash App, Venmo, on every single transaction that you have. We are taxed to death. We are subjugated. We are spied on. And you want me to sit here and feel bad for a foreign entity who's having to go through the same hell that every single US citizen has for the last 50 years? Honey, you ain't getting sympathy from me. Okay. You all sat there with your eyes closed and your ears covered saying, nah, 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 it doesn't matter. But terrorism, nah, 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 security, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to pay for international money laundering. I don't want to pay for international child trafficking. Oh, you don't? You don't? What do you think okay, tell me this, Ron. Do you think after the Epstein disclosures, after the AG, and I hate to bring it back to Epstein, but this is just such a clear violation of the law and just such a clear weaponized incompetence of the United States government. It is corruption at its finest. Do you know what happened in that case, Ron? The AG sued Chase Bank because Chase Bank not only did they set up a bunch of entities for Jeffrey Epstein to launder money through, they financed him. They gave him loans to continue. The SEO of Chase Bank was buying and selling women from Jeffrey Epstein, allegedly. Not allegedly. They came to a settlement. It's settled. The SEC, they got fines for it, and they weren't reporting on Jeffrey Epstein. They weren't reporting on any of these shell companies. And now by the way, the shell companies are the entire excuse for the implementation of this new FinCEN rule, is to shut down on these empty companies that are just used in foreign money laundering and money transactions so that the US government can't spy on people's individual transactions. It all goes full circle. I just wish that there was equal treatment and protection and enforcement of the law. Is that too much to ask for, Ron?
No, it's not.
Okay, I'm done.
But I can tell you this. You're not going to get it. As much as you and I are entitled to argue for it and to advocate for it, but we see that the courts are part of the problem. They have been for a very long time. We could just talk about the shadow docket in the Southern District of New York.
The existence of FISA. What is that? What is that, Ron? You're not allowed to keep any secrets from the government, but the government is allowed to keep every secret from you.
Including secrets about you.
About you? Oh, trust me. I get pulled over and put into a separate line by the TSA every single flight I have ever taken, foreign and domestic. Every single one. I don't have a mark. I don't know if I'm on a no-fly list. I suspect that I am. I don't know who I pissed off, but I apparently pissed off somebody. And that's little old me. If that's happening to little old me, think about who else is happening to. We know that it happened to who's soon to be the head of DNI, which I am so excited for. Oh my goodness. I absolutely love. What is her name? She's phenomenal. Tulsi Gabbard. They did the same thing to Tulsi Gabbard. They put her on a no-fly list, and now she's the head of director of national intelligence. Oh, mwah, 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 mwah. Sweetest justice. But this is terrifying. This is truly terrifying, Ron. This should terrify you. If there is no justice for FISA defendants, if there is no justice for people who are parts of these shadow courts, then that means there is no justice, period. Period. It doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist for everyone equally and fairly under the law, it doesn't exist for anyone.
She's right.
Thank you. Thank you, Ron. That just made my night. That made my year. That's all I needed to hear at the end of 2024.
You're 100% right. So now let me flip it on you.
Flip it.
Why the hell can the government tell me that I can't have TikTok on my phone? I want TikTok. In your hands-off regime, I'm Ron Coleman. I've got an IQ of 1 million, okay? I'm not going to, by the way, the high IQ guys, they're always sucked in by this crap. But okay. I'm not going to get sucked. I mean, look, generally speaking, in terms of the data collection stuff, first of all, as the squarest man in America, I have no data. I have no money, and I have no data. I'm completely. I have no trouble.
Ron, do you want to say you have no money one more time?
I have. I mean, of course, I control the international money supply, but I personally, my share of it at the moment is, leaves a little bit to be desired. But the
Is this
in
I'm
our
so out of the
libertarian
anti-Semitism too.
fantasy world, right?
Oh my goodness.
I'm willing. Listen, I'm willing to pay the price of parting with my privacy so
Okay.
that I can get incredible TikTok tips about the worst place to sit on an airplane, and why Israel is the worst Nazis in the world, and all the great thoughts and the latest dances and the challenges, whatever they have on TikTok. Why should the government be allowed to stop me?
Well, because the government has an interest in protecting the good of the people and protecting the
Oh,
public.
the good of the people. So, in other words, like to protect us against money laundering and human trafficking and
And
all.
drugs, and guess what? You don't have you don't have the right to purchase or hold or obtain
Okay,
whatever
so
you
now the good
want,
of
Ron.
so now the good of the people. Okay, the good of the people means that they need to also know if we're making deposits of more than $10,000.
Exactly.
These are hard
I
questions.
see how this goes, and that's the issue. I'm just saying, if we're going to live in this world and we're going to follow the law, and I'm not advocating for the destruction of TikTok. Okay, I am advocating for the sale of TikTok. I do think that TikTok should be sold by a or should be owned by a national. Okay, national corporation, something that we can get our hands on, something we can deal with if needed, if necessary. Okay, I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem with people owning TikTok, choosing to use TikTok, downloading TikTok on their phone. That's not the problem. I don't have a problem with people deciding to look at whatever they want. As a huge free speech advocate, okay, I am completely comfortable with you using your money how you want, spending your money how you want, where you want, okay, and not having the government look at all those things. And also saying that this foreign company is not protected under the Constitution like a national company would be. And in that case, if national company, then constitutional protections.
What I think has to happen is that the court, because it is taking up the issue, has to decide, has to establish a test. Now, one of the well-known problems in constitutional law of the last several generations is the promulgation of multi-part tests. Instead of judges ruling on things, saying that's not what the Constitution says,
which is all they should do.
Which is all they should do.
That's all they should do.
And if everything warrants a 150-page opinion with four concurrences and 3 dissents and 5,000 footnotes, they could write 10 or 15-page decisions for the hard ones, and maybe they would actually be able to hear more than 7 or 8 cases a year, and stop leaving open all these glaring, crappy Court of Appeals opinions and circuit splits, which they just don't seem to give a crap about because they're so busy they have to take the whole summer off every year. Okay, all right, different topic, but they're going to have to establish, let's just call it a standard. Let's not use the word test. Let's not dare them. A standard. When, going back to my point about the singularity, when do we say that a technology or an activity is not that takes the form of a communicative activity,
Mm-hmm.
is not, but is in fact a weapon? And are there things that are, does it have to be a weapon in order for us to make it illegal, or can it just be merely by virtue of being foreign? Let's just, okay, I'm gonna give you that one. By virtue of being foreign, do we say it doesn't have to be a weapon? Because weapons, if it were really a weapon, we would really be saying there has to be a declaration of war because it's an act of war to fire a weapon at our country, but it could be deleterious. It could be harmful to the national interest. From the beginning of the Bolshevik Revolution through the present, security services in the KGB and its successor have been actively involved in subverting American institutions and interests through all kinds of media, industries, organizations. There are
Academia.
all kinds of weapons that we don't consider to be acts of war. Jefferson makes a very good. Erin being a little cynical there. The warm, loving mother is getting a little bit angrier now. Jefferson, without a super chat, yes, he's referring to my eye roll over another test, right? But what can you do? You have to have a stand, so let's call it a standard, like I said.
But with 2A, it doesn't even need to be a standard. It's explicit in the Constitution, and that goes back to, you asked, where does the government have the right to tell me I can't own TikTok? First of all, they're not banning TikTok on your phone. They're not. They're just banning it off of certain stores where you would purchase it. So you could still download it. It's not illegal to possess TikTok under what they're calling for. They're just simply saying TikTok cannot profit and cannot trade and sell and operate in the United States off of our markets if that's what they want to do. And there's plenty of examples. Blood-based meats, so blood sausages that are imported here to the United States. You don't have the right anywhere in the Constitution to a blood sausage. And the US government, like it or not, which I don't like, they can regulate for the welfare of the people. They get to make those laws and decisions. And so this is, I agree with you.
Asking a related question.
Yeah.
Then this is more of a singularity. So is the data they're collecting, or I don't know whether Wesley means the data being collected or the data that we are sharing or receiving over TikTok. Is it
okay? Can it be said that data is part of civil right or free speech because reflects our personal info, or is data like a piece of art? So lots of data that is also collected. I think it's important to recognize that certain companies have exclusive rights to your data when you agree to their terms of conditions on a cell phone. And one of the concerns that I have heard raised about the use of TikTok is that TikTok has spyware that goes in and steals algorithmic and data information that's available on your other apps that would otherwise be exclusive to those apps.
In other words, it does what Facebook was doing.
Yes, which is theft. And the US government does not look well on that kind of activity.
Well, I would say that compared to the Europeans, the US government basically doesn't give a crap. I mean, it is, in terms of protecting consumer privacy, it has been really laissez-faire. I mean, very little in terms of regulation has taken place. Although this might be the beginning of that. Do you have any idea what happened where all of a sudden over the summer there was like a moment where all of a sudden consensus was formed on this TikTok? You remember that? Like there had been. The bill was around for a while, and then all of a sudden it seemed that it was the boats were there where they had not been there before. Did anyone ever figure out what went on there?
I didn't. I couldn't figure it out, to be honest, Ron. In preparation of this discussion, I actually went and looked it up, and I agree with you. It was very sudden. There was this very sudden, swift change because do you remember under the Trump administration, there were talks of a TikTok ban. He had brought up a TikTok ban. Certain governors were calling for one. AGs were calling for TikTok bans for all the assorted reasons that I listed before. And I don't know what happened to make them flip. My guess is that there must have been a meeting, an intelligence or security meeting. Either that, or we were coming up on an election. Here's my cynical brain. We're coming up on an election. How much money?
You're not being cynical. You're being a schmuck.
How much money does Facebook, Google, and TikTok competitors pay towards campaigns? If they came in and said, look, we have no problem donating to your campaign this election cycle, but we do have a problem with this particular competitor, and we have some concerns that you asked us to raise to Congress when we saw these concerns arise. You asked our industry to create a standard, and we have some concerns about TikTok violating that standard. And we would like you to address it by passing this new piece of legislation. We are in support of it. All it would take is one lobbyist going into a bunch of offices saying the same thing and offering to, or threatening rather, to withhold funds from Google, which Alphabet owns YouTube. For those who don't know, I think YouTube is one of TikTok's, if not their prime competitor, along with Meta, who owns Instagram. In terms of short form trash content is what I call it. Short-term trash content. There is no competitor to TikTok besides those two. So I'd imagine that that's probably what happened. If I were to be a cynical and conspiracy theorist, that would be my guess.
I'll take that. I think that's entirely appropriate for considering the subject matter.
And Google, and it would be a risky game for Google to play because they just got deemed to be a monopolist.
Yeah.
And so if they're going to be monopolizing video content and speech content, that's deeply concerning to me as well. I already have problems with their search engine, and I agree. They should have been calling it a monopoly a long time ago. Either that, or they should be you know what we could do, Ron? Tell me what you think about this. I want your thoughts. I think the best way to regulate this whole situation, including TikTok, would be to declare these platforms public forums and apply the public forum doctrine to all of these public platforms, these large internet platforms. What do you think?
It's a topic that has obviously been broached many times. When the censorship issue came up, Justice Thomas seems to have a certain appeal or interest in that approach, but none of the other justices, I think, do. The question is, if Congress were to make such a decision, would it be upheld, or would it be an unconstitutional taking? It's interesting that we view the issue differently now. Surely, that X is owned by Elon Musk and friends, compared to the far more restrictive censorship, corporate censorship. Well, no, it was actually government censorship that was exercised through corporations. In a case, and that case, by the way, in the Fifth Circuit, Missouri, it's still being litigated. Even though the Supreme Court so unfortunately vacated the injunction, the case is still being litigated, and there's been some incredible discovery in that case. There's a lot. We will hear more about that, but that's a really complex. It's a really complex issue.
I have no problems applying the public forum doctrine.
But what does that do? Does making it a public forum, that just seems to me to have a First Amendment implications. But what does it do in terms of regulation?
It says that you have to create rules that are open to the public where everyone can use it, but you have to enforce it equally. You can't favor one political wing over another. And you have to provide access to everyone, even ideas that you find objectionable or you don't like. Or if you do find that speech objectionable, or you say, I don't like it, well, then that's fine. But you have to clearly post those rules publicly and enforce it equally and fairly. That's all. My understanding is that's how the public forum doctrine works. If you hold yourself out to the public and everybody thinks, hey, wait a second, I'm pretty sure that this is a public forum and I have the right to speak here, which is what everyone does when they get on Meta, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. They all get on there and say, I have the right to say what I want to say. They do the same thing on YouTube, etc. Well, yes, you do, but we do have certain rules regulating time and certain content that we are allowed to filter or ban or reduce access to in the public forum. I'm fine with that. If you want to act as a private forum, right? So you want to have your own private separate forum, that's fine. But don't hold yourself out to the public as though you are a public forum. And then utilize that mask of transparency and saying, oh, we're transparent. Oh, we follow the law. We believe in free speech principles, and then go around and start banning people or start taking away their what is it on Twitter now? Your check mark, just because you object to their speech or you find their speech terribly objectionable. By the way, I am with you 100% on Twitter. They need to start moderating. If they're going to sit there and moderate voices that they don't like when it comes to issues with H-1B visas, when they sit there and put filters over graphic material from terrorists, but they don't filter out burning women on a subway, extremely graphic videos posted for an entire week, and they don't filter out anti-Semitic materials and content, that's a problem.
And look, my friend Business Casual, thank you for the good wishes, my friend, has a very interesting chat here, and this goes back to the point about the singularity. Google is a content provider, a content platform. Google, all these platforms are engaged in all kinds of commerce. He's saying that he can't make super chat payments, which strikes me as a high level deprivation of rights. I think other people have been able to make, and I know, by the way, Staccato, thank you so much. Scott DVS, my friend from Valiant Renegade Land, gifted 10. That's how Staccato rolls. He gives out the memberships, and that's nice. That bulks up the channel a little bit, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Doctor. But I don't think anyone. I think Business Casual. That's just. I think it's a you thing, and we know they don't like you. What's John? Good to see you. That's right. So you can just do like. Should I do it like this? I should enable people to bypass.
Absolutely, because so that you guys know, whenever you donate through in super chat form or otherwise on YouTube, they take a cut. What is it? 30%, 15%? It's between 15 or 30%. If you donate directly through Cash App or through Venmo, one, it helps us a lot with come tax season. It helps us show the government what is a gift or what is a basically a handout from somebody versus what is an actual payment. So it gives the creators a little more flexibility come tax season. It also allows us to take home more of what you want to give us. And we know you want to give us $10, let's say. We would like that $10 too, without Google taking its $3 from it. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to put my Cash App up there too.
You absolutely should. Yeah, and everybody, feel free to donate via Cash App, Venmo.
If you're having problems, okay, no more excuses. There it is. But of course, but again, so many of these services are connected or owned. It is a kind of a singularity thing. So whenever we break down regimes, whenever we look at networks that are not serving competition, let's put it that way, what ends up happening inevitably is that someone sweeps in and tries to take advantage to create it's basically what's economists call rent seeking. Someone is always going to try to get his foot in the door and be the guy who has the unfair advantage over other people. It's just how the free market works. Jefferson throwing money at this discussion like a drunken sailor.
We love you, Jefferson.
Well, we're not quite there yet.
Oh, sorry. I love you, Jefferson.
No, that's not what I meant. I meant in answer to his question that how large could a live stream chat get before it could be deemed a public forum? I will say this much: 25 people are watching on my little channel. 79 people are watching on Danny's somewhat larger channel.
Oh, yay!
2,476 Americans are watching on my X, and because X has not yet figured out how to do chats or monetize. I'm not complaining because it's still views and it's still good stuff. Look at Ellen. Is it like Eileen?
Eileen. Mm-hmm. She taught me how to say her name.
Hitting milestones without even trying. Well, that's really the way you want to roll, frankly, if you can, I think. So congratulations. And, we were very, very pleased to be sharing that moment with you. Yeah, these are the kind of things that you would think scholars and law schools should be dealing with, because they involve a lot of levels of theoretical sophistication. And there are some really great thinkers in this area. But the problem is that academia has become so partisan and so politicized that it's really hard to get to trust them up for any kind of guidance on almost anything anymore. So we're going to have to work it out on this live stream.
I love you, Ron, because one of the things you just did, platonically, of course, one of the things you just did is you said to me, do you remember what it was? And I want everybody to focus on what Ron did and why Ron should really be an academic and should be out there as a professor teaching law students. The first thing he says to me after I'm done with ranting is, okay, now argue the other side. Now make it make sense, because you just gave this impassioned speech about why the government shouldn't be regulating. So how is this not a contradiction of what you just shared? And that should be what law schools are doing. And unfortunately, they are not doing it. They are not challenging their students because students have gotten wise to the fact that they're the ones who are paying the bill for the professor. They're paying the professor to teach them. And students, like all people, are lazy. In my personal opinion, most people in the world are lazy. We want shortcuts. We want the black letter law. We want the rules. And then we want to move on. We don't want to play the logic game. We don't want to argue these things. And until schools stop being partisan and embrace free speech and embrace objections, embrace really the marketplace of ideas, just the idea that certain ideas will rise to the top and certain ideas will fall to the bottom.
Well, we saw something amazing in the last 6 months, which is that so many leftists have been offended by having to defend their arguments on X, or even to be at risk of being community noted, that they all started their own No Girls Allowed Treehouse Club.
Oh no, they allow girls and boys, just not adults.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the same mentality. I mean, we have raised a generation. It's your generation, Danny, and the only reason that I think you came out of it is because of the way you were brought up, and the adventures in life that you had.
I am honored that you would say I am out of that.
Well, obviously you're not.
Ron.
Obviously you're not, because first of all, I agree with your views, so obviously I'm prejudiced.
Thank you, Ron. And you said I was right earlier. This is the best day of my life.
No, but so what Danny has the ability to do, folks, and which is an increasingly short supply, especially among the youths, is what we call dialectical thinking. And that's what she was just giving an example of on my part. It's what lawyers historically have been trained to do, which is to say, here's my argument. I'm going to articulate it to the appropriate level of depth. But here's what my adversary would say. And if you ever listen to an appellate argument, you will hear an experienced appellate advocate anticipate his adversary's argument, which requires that you understand it, not that you agree with it, but that you understand it as if you agreed with it. Because otherwise, there's a less polite way of saying this, but let's just say you're just drinking your own Kool-Aid. I don't know, by the way, if the impression that was given about Elon Musk removing stars or checks from people over the HB1 visa thing, I think that turned out to be a misunderstanding because it had something to do with some common certification that various accounts were involved in. I'm not really sure.
I'm not either on that. And I've heard that argument. I've heard that argument. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt if that's the case. I'll tell you, it shocked me when it kind of shocked me when that happened. I was more so shocked that there was so much strong advocacy for the increase of H-1B visas. I guess I'm not shocked because that's how he makes his money, right? Like the guy outsources all of his work. It's fine. But
thanks, Alice. Thanks for the super sticker.
But the fact that he came out so strongly against anti-Indian rhetoric and hatred on the platform, and I'm sitting there going, well, this is new. You were okay when Jews were the target. You were okay when Muslims were the target. You were okay when Mormons were the target. And now suddenly we need to protect Indians? What? So Hispanics, the target, totally fine to make fun of all the Hispanics in the world on Twitter. But God forbid that you make a joke about Indians on Twitter, you will get banned or you will be silenced or you will get in trouble with the moderators. That is what he told everyone. He explicitly said, we're going to start moderating the chatter online that is so deleterious. And I'm saying, well, that's fine. But it's not fine because you're not doing it. Again, it's equal and fair enforcement and transparent enforcement. You haven't done it for anyone else. And now you're going to pick and choose who you're going to do it for. This is absurd.
Yeah, I mean, I do think he is vulnerable on that point. Listen, let's face it, when you're that rich, you do get used to having your way. I think he handles it better than a lot of other people in his position or near his position have shown themselves to do. But he is not a perfect person. I mean, we were talking about fertility before. Yes, he has a lot of children, but he also doesn't seem to have a lot of stable nuclear families in which those children are going to be growing up.
He doesn't pick good mothers. I have no problem with serial polygamy is what I call it. So you pick a mother and then you move to the next baby mama and the next baby mama, whether that's through marriage or divorce. It's serial polygamy is what I call it. You have obligations to all these mothers and children. You're a polygamist in my mind. So I have no problem with him engaging in polygamy. My issue is why is he choosing such women to rear, to birth and rear his children? That to me seems odd. Going back to what you had said earlier, Ron, the purpose of having children is not simply to repopulate the earth, although that's a great practice and I strongly encourage it, but rather it's so that, because family is not everything, as you said, legacy is. And what heritage and what legacy you pass down to your children, what they embody is what counts. And so why, for a man like Elon Musk, who's willing to say, promise me everything and I'll tell you to shove it, I'll tell you no, Why is he choosing these women? It's very odd to me.
Because the answer, I will answer it. Because he does not, in fact, live according to a coherent and comprehensive moral code.
Okay, that's fair. All right, there you go. It's not
And,
some conspiracy. It
and,
is.
and let me make it clear,
Yeah.
none of us does. We might identify one. Oh, Ron's an Orthodox Jew. So therefore, there's all the backward writing books are in the corner up there, okay? And those are the rules. So I may depart from my obligations to God to conduct myself, morally according to His law. At least I can then identify that I've done something wrong, though. The point is, we're all human. We're all human.
But,
So
but you're only a hypocrite if you have some moral code. You're only a hypocrite if you have some principle. And what you said earlier, I think, is probably true. The man hasn't really thought about it. He hasn't, I think, formulated a concrete idea of what the purpose of a family is outside of maybe a collective good that he sees in repopulation. Maybe that's it.
That's possible. There's another possibility, which is that there is an ego component to making mini-me's.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
But I there's no reason to judge him unfavorably in that regard. I mean, certainly he takes, as far as I understand, he takes responsibilities for his mini-me's, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
But every child is entitled to two parents where it's possible to have them.
And that's the only issue I have actually with polygamy. When people ask me, the only issue I have is you lose time with one of the parents. If you're practicing polyandry and you have a woman who's, married to multiple husbands, you now have, very limited access to your mother. And the same thing happens in polygamy, but more so when you have 120 kids that you're feeding and taking care of and spending time with. It's very, very difficult to have time alone with dad, and to build that relationship with one of your parents. On the other hand, you do get many more parents in your life, and parental figures. So, there's pluses and minuses, but I agree with you. I think what? You got $100 Cash App. You should read that.
Well, the whole chat it came in through Cash App. Yes, thank you. Okay, well, I should read it. Yes.
Yes.
And I'm not quite sure who.
That's our first $100 on this channel, Ron, or on this stream.
So I've got to find it here. I got to find myself here. Where did I do it? Spread his genes.
We're talking a lot about family and reproduction today. I apologize for those who are uninterested in those things.
No, I think. Listen, people love us streaming together. We're good enough. We're something enough, and darn it, people like us.
I think people like to watch your very wise.
Yeah, I knew it was from you, Atomic. Thank you. I thank you very much. Business Casual. If you're not aware of this channel, folks, and the fights that this man has fought, not to mention the fights in his head. So Orthodox pays.
I'm looking them up.
It also costs, believe me. Oh my gosh.
Good night. I want your friends. Come check out my channel too, Business Casual, and subscribe.
It's very, very nice to hear from.
I'm here all week.
I'm here all week.
Sorry, I was looking at Business Casual's channel. 1 million subscribers.
Yeah, he's a big deal.
Well, you just got one more, Business Casual. Thank you. Oh my goodness. You guys, there's good stuff here.
Yeah.
How did I not? I feel so. Oh, he does the rise of the Rothschilds. I assume I actually don't know.
The Rothschilds, of course. I mean, I know them very well.
Rockefellers. You keep on bringing up these anti-Semitic conspiracies, and
Well, I
it's
was on Tim Pool last a couple weeks ago.
how was that?
It was
Tell,
great.
tell.
It was, but I leaned into the merchant thing, the whole thing, because Tim had been trolling people because people were getting on him for not being sufficiently pro-Palestinian, and so he started trolling the Groypers and like posting Israeli flags. I don't post Israeli flags, okay? And so when when I came on, I just leaned into it, and we had a whole because Tim's stream was a little bit bigger than ours, and he gets and so all these nasty people come onto the stream and they make nose jokes and the little hat. I mean, all the third grade anti-Semite stuff. So I was just playing with it. It has, but you do bring up an important point. I mean, X really has become the world headquarters of anti-Semitic discourse. There's really no getting away from that.
Ron, I told you I have never been exposed to anti-Semitism like I have been on X. I grew up outside of New York. Okay, I didn't have a lot of connections or relationship with the Jewish community. It wasn't something. It was very foreign to me. It was over here, right? And as a devout conspiracy analyst, I have scoured the internet for conspiracies, and I have not come across anyone blaming the Jews for everything.
For everything.
Apart from actual Nazi documents and actual, historical material where the Jews are blamed for everything. And so I think you're absolutely right. As someone who is no stranger to the internet, 4chan, you name it, I have been astounded by the amount of anti-Semitism that is not just on the platform, but is propelled on my feed constantly. And I couldn't imagine being Jewish. I'm sure it's even worse. It is personally offensive to me as a believer in any religion. You should be offended. The idea that you would go after someone for just being a people, for just being them, it's very absurd. I can't relate. I don't appreciate it, and I agree with you. That's my point. This long, speech is to say I agree with you.
Yeah, it is really something, but you kind of have to I'll say this much: it isn't something that I grew up with. It was much, it just wasn't. I mean, social media makes everybody a big brave guy. These are overwhelmingly anonymous people, and of course, most of our friends here are anonymous people, but they act respectfully. But if you're going to call somebody out and call somebody names and and all these sort of things, behind behind anonymity. But this is an old story, and bottom line, it doesn't get me down. It doesn't worry me. It doesn't scare me. God runs the world. Okay, let's leave it there.
I told you my old family adage, what we say.
What do they say? Oh, yeah, you did, but I'm sure I forgot it. As I forget most things.
So this is something I'll be teaching my kids as well, which is life isn't fair, but God is good. And that's it. That's it. Life isn't fair. God is good. Leave it at that.
That might sound trivial to a lot of people, but a lot of the things that bother us, a lot of the things that we call woke, are really manifestations of people believing that they are entitled to something. They are entitled to something, they're being deprived of something, and it's everyone else's fault. And anti-Semitism is a particular strain of that mentality, but so is wokeism. If because of my race or my sex or my sexual practices, I'm being deprived of something that I otherwise would have coming to me. And therefore, you're not only going to give it to me, you're going to give me more than I could have ever possibly achieved, regardless. If you start out and end with the premise that, and this is a very, very difficult, I don't want to trivialize it from the other direction either. We're talking about the fundamental question of theodicy, right? I mean, why do good things happen to bad people? And why do bad things happen to good people? You know how long it took me to come to terms with the fact that I could work very hard and be diligent and be original and creative and be smart. And that people with 1/10 of my ability and maybe half of my effort would be orders of magnitude more financially successful than I am.
I can't relate, Ron, because I'm not even near your level of intelligence. And my unfairness is that I was born with an unfair disadvantage. So no, I'm just kidding. That's heretical. Sorry, God. I actually am blessed. I am really, really blessed
You are.
in terms of
You are
intelligence and other things.
You first of all, Danny is very intelligent. She is well spoken. She has the character that results from really working your way up through life from considerable disadvantage. Thank God. Okay, Garrett, name the tune. Name the tune.
Sing Silent Night, because guess what? I am both flattered and offended and upset. I got copyright claims on my stream from 3 different companies, all using different algorithms for singing Silent Night.
For singing it?
For singing it. So that means I was A, on key, B, hit every note, and 3, sounded professional enough that the algorithm would pick up on my singing.
Night, holy night. What are the words?
All is calm, all is bright.
All is calm, all is white.
Bright.
Round you, that was a joke. Round young virgin mother and child. I have a cold, but I can carry it.
You should sing Jewish songs. I love Jewish songs. I love their melodies. And I didn't know that I was into Jewish music until I fell in love with Cole Porter at a very young age. And I was like, why do these melodies just strike at your heart? The minute you hear them, there's just these little riffs that just get you, there's almost like this dissonance in harmony, and it draws you in. And I'm going,
well, what you think of as Jewish music tends to, so there are certain components of Jewish, what we might call the sound of Jewish music, because it comes from Central and Eastern Europe, but it has very distinctive Levantine, aspects to it. You can. Is
that it?
Yeah. There's something in music, and I've been out of music theory for a very, very long time, but there's something called modalities, and Middle Eastern modalities are very distinct, and there used to be a kind of music that was very particular to Eastern European Jewish celebrations. It still exists, but it in its pure form, it's very hard to find these days, called klezmer, which involves the lead instrument is usually a clarinet. Yeah, it's you can take it or leave it, but
I know exactly what you're talking about. And yes, any clarinet piece where it's out there and oh my gosh. It gets me every time. I love it.
So, Benny Goodman the great clarinetist of the big band era, 100 years ago, practically, what was Jewish, and you could hear the sounds of klezmer music in some of his, well-known clarinet pieces. In any event, in the listen, it is a musical season. Last night at the party, I like to have music on a little bit. One of my nephews was it one of my nephews or one of my sons or one of my peeps was suggesting that maybe it's already loud enough in here without the music, and I found a really cool like jazz cafe Hanukkah channel on YouTube to play. Oh, don't let them know that I was using it for a public performance. No, that wasn't a public performance. It was just in my house. In any event, it was all of a sudden became a very funky and hip Hanukkah party.
So
Actually,
Rhapsody in Blue
Israel is
has
the
that
only
whole-
country in the world, as far as I have been told, whose national anthem is written in a minor key.
Whose is? Israel's?
Israel.
Because the minor key is the best key. People, no, and I say this not jokingly. I say this very seriously. One of the reasons I love Rachmaninoff is because he is one of the few composers who is not afraid to play in the minor key for the vast majority of his compositions, and to go from minor chord up to major, drop back down into minor chords. It is so breathtaking. Now, Rhapsody in Blue has that one little clarinet solo. Is that the klezmer that you're talking about?
So no, that's more of a blues.
That's more blues.
Right,
Okay.
because it has the slide. But I mean, I would imagine. I mean, Gershwin also, of course, was Jewish.
Oh my gosh. I just love the Jews.
Well, listen,
I'm just trying to think. Is there one Jew who I don't like? No, not really. Well, except George Soros, but he doesn't count.
No,
I don't
Mary
count.
Jane. We like minor key. Everyone here is a
Minor key.
Right, so
Gorgeous.
if you're choosing a national anthem, though, usually you choose an upbeat. Okay. Da da
Right.
da 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 da. But Hatikva is right. So the Jews are whining, right? We have a running joke in our house that whenever we don't understand some custom, well, why do we do that? What the answer is always the tears of the Jewish people.
Oh my gosh, Koreans do that. It's Han. So Han is a very similar concept. It's collective suffering over time through all the people. And it's like a well, I say it's like an aquifer of emotion and depth and collective suffering that the West can't explain or understand.
Well, because
and
right,
the music reflects Han, and when you hear it,
Korea
even if
has
you don't
been
speak Korean, you can cry.
has for 1,000+ years
Yes.
been the bitch of every other major power.
Yep.
In the region.
Yes, and just notoriously so forever. And
Jews of the Far East.
Very similar. And so it's interesting because Korean music, if you listen to their traditional music and even, some of their more folky songs today, you listen to it, it will make you cry. And some of the music sounds like someone is screaming. There is one song that is about a mother who crosses over a river, never to return. And it's a child who's on the banks of the river crying out to their mother. And the way in which the singer has to convey this will absolutely bring you to tears every time. And there's something so cathartic when you listen to it. And when you're able to join in that, oh, thank you, Business Casual. You're the best. Eventually, Senate, actually. So there's something that's very healing. And there's parts of the human soul that collective suffering touches on, that unless you come from that sort of background or have that level of community, I don't know if it ever touches you quite the same way. Do you know what I mean? Am I talking too woo-woo out there?
No, I don't think so. I don't think you are. I do think that many people who don't share that heritage have that gear. They have that bone they can hear, but there are many who can't.
That's sad.
Let's face it. There are people who you just know you're never going to click with. They're just too. I mean, you and I come from entirely different backgrounds, but we have many of the same notes, and we enjoy talking to each other, and that's why JKD Buck 76 can say that y'all, meaning both of us, have the best books behind us because obviously looking at both of our books. I once interviewed with one of the largest law firms in the country, and they had a New York office, and I had an opportunity to be a partner in this firm, and I just came back and said, Jane, I just don't click with these people. These are Vikings. These are like there's, I cannot. I don't see where I get a finger grip on relating to them. They're just not my kind of people. So, that does sometimes happen. But you have to think of it in terms of a big Venn diagram. That this is a really important point that I learned from Jane. One of the problems that we have today, and this goes back to the wokeness, is that this representation stuff, right? I have to I have to only read books about people who are like me because I need representation, and they have to have gone through what I went through. And she was explaining to me that that misses the whole idea of literature. The idea of literature, okay, Anne Frank's diary didn't become a bestseller because Jews bought it. It's because humane people bought it.
Yep.
You learn to understand others. What we have in common is our humanity. And yes, you might never be able to imagine the experience that such and such a person went through because of your differing background, but that's how we open ourselves up. And that's why I have, speaking of my books, I've got most of the works of Solzhenitsyn and the Gulag Archipelago. I'm not Russian, but what I learned about the human soul from reading Solzhenitsyn's understanding, of the Gulag Archipelago, as expressed in the Gulag Archipelago, it changed my life. It completely really changed my life.
And what is the book? Go ahead and rep the book one more time for us readers or aspiring readers. Oh, no comments about Ron standing up to grab a book? Shame on the chat. I rather notoriously went to pick up a book, and the chat got a little crazy. So Gulag?
Really? 3 volumes. You can't even find a hard. I don't like paperbacks because I don't play well with my toys. You cannot even find a hardcover copy of the Gulag Archipelago. It's 3 volumes, and it resulted in the Nobel Prize for Literature being awarded to Solzhenitsyn. And he wrote about the prison camp system in the Soviet Union, its history, and the just unbelievable humanity. I read it for the first time. I read through all 3 volumes twice. But I have certain skills, and reading fast is one of them.
What a blessing. That is an incredible skill because I don't have said skill. And that is very impressive. And it has its benefits, people.
Oh, it has its benefits.
Ron is
part of the reason
yes.
No. It's a great gift. It's a great gift. Anyway, the point is that's how you learn humanity, and try to broaden your world. I didn't really have. I'm an old Cold Warrior. When I was in college, we still had the Soviet Union and commies and Ronald Reagan. And there you go, Aaron. I have skills. Consequences. Okay, listen. It's been an incredible couple of hours. What do we want to? First of all, thank you for joining us tonight. We were, as we pointed out, we both had, for our own reasons and for good reasons, Jewish holiday season and Danny's trip to Korea, and then the election, and then I was.
Ron is gone. For all of those reasons that we were unable to perform or entertain you guys or educate you guys, we are grateful that you found your way back to us. And not only that, you came back with a vengeance. We're getting views that are akin. By the way, we were competing for a while, still competing with the quartering, which is saying a lot on Twitter in terms of viewership online. So thank you so much to everyone for finding your way back to us, for enjoying this time, for posing your ideas, and for being respectful and commenting down in the chat and enjoying each other's company as well.
Thank you. Really, it is great. I have to tell you, I am very proud of how this conversation. This was, I think, a really interesting discussion, and I just want Shane to get his opportunity to make his public apology as humiliating as possible.
I appreciate that. I'm fine with it. I just sometimes, can I tell you something, Ron? And I had a problem with this as an active LDS member Mormon. I forget that men and women are different and that women are objectified sexually. And I sometimes behave like a guy. I'm very assertive. My mind doesn't operate that way. So I'll do something and then people will point out that it's suggestive or inappropriate. And they have to point it out to me because otherwise it doesn't click for me. My mind is not there. I am so practical in my relationships. So, fear not, people. I am not embarrassed. If anything, the chat ought to have been embarrassed.
Well,
but in the best way. No, the best way is if I'm monetized and objectified. If you're going to objectify me, fine, but pay me first. Come on. $1 per cat call is fine. You want to super chat me $1 and cat call me, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that this is going to have to be, we are going to have to require more of you in terms of monetization, frankly, in the future.
Indeed.
But we really no. But this is
I gotta contribute
really
something.
Let's have a great new year in the coming year. We see that God has given us the opportunity to return the country that we love to some closer semblance of what it was meant to be. It's going to be very challenging. Danny and I, as lawyers, are very often given the opportunity to be, in our own little ways, on the edge of some of the issues. And Danny, when she's in the Senate, of course, is going to be probably involved in some level of insurrection, I expect. But the good kind.
I'm sorry, did you say insurrection? Weren't you the one who warned me last time about calling for political uprisings as a licensed attorney with the bar? I will not be involved in any sort of insurrection.
No
Revolution,
insurrection.
Perhaps, if there was an opportunity to bring great and positive changes to this country, of course I'd be involved in that. I'd be at the forefront. I apologize. My dog has joined the show. I can't get him off. So,
well, I think everyone's fine with that. Good night, everyone. Happy New Year, a day early. Thanks for joining us. And it's been an incredible simulation of reality once again. See you next year.